as just a football fan, I know Joe Valerio had to really enjoy what we saw this weekend. His Chiefs went on, but just the football in general, his Chiefs played in probably one of the greatest games there ever was, Joe. I mean, I don't know that you topped that game.
Mike, I got to agree with you, man. Well, number one, let's start at the top level. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that was the best weekend of football probably ever when you put all four of those games. And if you were to watch them from morning till night, if they were all on the same day, it would have been the best day of a football fan's life ever. Because it was just like 4 walk-offs. Like, how does that happen in a game of inches that they call football, that you come out with 4 walk-offs in playoff football? Like, I don't think it's ever happened. I don't think it'll ever happen again.
Right.
With that kind of excitement for each game, no matter whether you loved or hated any of those teams, the way they all turned out.
Yeah, you get a situation where the game comes down to the kicker in all 4 games. I mean, now let me ask you as a player. When the game comes down to the kicker, how are the rest of the guys reacting to that? When you you've played this game, and I'm not trying to take anything away from what the kicker indeed does, but the fact that the game is now on the foot of this guy, what is it? Take us through a sideline when that happens.
Oh, it's well, first of all, I was a long snapper.
You were the long snapper.
So I have.
I did not know that.
I have an affinity for kickers, right? Because we spend a lot of time. It's like a pitcher catcher battery, right? You gotta work together. You got to get the laces right. Like, you have to adjust your speed and timing of the snap to the holder and to the kicker. So there's a lot of relationship building that goes on with kickers and snappers and holders. So I kind of I have a little bit more of that like affinity for kickers, because I know how hard they work, right? And I know the pressure that is on them, because, Mike, you miss a block in the third quarter, you miss a tackle in the second quarter. All right, what do you give up, an extra 5 yards or maybe even a touchdown or whatever because you have a missed play or something. But there's always more. Man, when you're the kicker, it's all eyes are on you. And it's like, I know that there were probably hundreds of Chiefs fans, thousands of Chiefs fans out there going, oh my God, Harrison Butker, if he makes that extra point, if he makes that field goal, we're not even in this situation. Because I was there. Lynn Elliott, we had, Mike, the closest I was ever to the Super Bowl was in 1995. We went 13-3 and had home field throughout the playoffs, right? Now, I was physically closer in 93 when we went to the AFC Championship, but that was a magical run. We were going in to play the Bills. They were on their 4th Super Bowl run, and we knew that was going to be a tough row to hoe, especially when Montana got knocked out of the game at Buffalo. So that was physically the closest I've ever been. But mentally, it was getting the bye in 1995. The Colts come into town, and Lynn Elliott, who has been our solid kicker all year, right? Who we were just so, he came from the Cowboys. We were coming off the retirement of Nick Lowry, right? Who was all everything kicker, right? 17, 18 years in the league. And we missed 3 field goals, make-ems. I mean, these were make-ems. And we ended up losing, to the Colts 10-6 when we were I don't even remember what we were a favorite in that game. But it was it was like people wanted to run him out of town. I mean, the political cartoons in the newspaper the next day were Lynn Elliott in front of a toilet and the stream is going off to the side, and it was like, well, I guess he's wide right again. It just the poor guy took a beating, and I just felt for him because he was one of my friends. He was a good guy. He did not want to miss those field goals. Trust me.
Of course not.
Anyway, that was a long answer to a short question.
That position, Joe, all right, has to be the loneliest feeling when you are called on and you are being the kicker in the game-winning moment might have to be the most pressure-filled situation in any sport.
It's up there. It's up there with bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, 3-2, and you're at bat. Right?
Really? I mean, it's just you're the whole stadium is just staring right at you.
Right at you. And and kickers get a bad rap, right? Because wow, they're not they're not the physical, macho players of the team, and they don't, they're not the tacklers or the blockers or the throwers and the glory. And it's tough. I mean, God, Mike, I not to beat on this poor Linelia thing, but like I just remember after that game, right? Just to give the listeners an inside, view, baseball, right? Like you got 53 plus everybody in the locker room. We lose that game to the Colts, right? Jim Harbaugh comes in, shocks the world, beats the heavily favored Chiefs at Arrowhead, and everybody's looking in the locker room. And I swear, Lynn was sitting over there by himself. Nobody, even his good friends. Like I gotta say, as I look back on it, like God, what a jerk I was to not go over and like put my arm around him. But it was like he was like a pariah. Like he was just sitting over there by himself because everybody was like, dude, come on, like that's your job. Like, and so I really feel for those guys, man. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I was thinking about that the other day. I didn't realize you were a long snapper, so that really adds to, because I'm thinking when you're a player and the kicker has all this on him, and it's such a helpless feeling. Now take us through, all right, what was going on in the last couple of minutes. If you are Joe Valerio, you're on the offense, and Josh Allen's on the field, because you're seeing on TV, they keep showing the video of Mahomes and how helpless you are that you can't do anything in those moments. And then you flip it over once Allen scores, Allen's on the sideline, and he can't do anything. So as an offensive player, when you are standing there and cannot do anything about it, awful feeling.
Mike, it's like anything in life. You want to control the narrative, right? Like you don't want to just rely on somebody else, right? What's that old saying? If you want a job done well, do it yourself, right? Like, I mean, that's just like a weird little saying to throw in there, metaphor, but like, that's how you feel. You would much rather, as an athlete, I know me personally, and I think there's a lot of athletes that would agree with me, given the circumstance. Okay, now granted, I don't know if 13 seconds. I don't know if I would have wanted to been on the offense and had that, but but like you want to be the one that says, all right, I want to win this game. Like that's what the great ones do, right? Like it's the Michael Jordan. It's the pick your favorite pressure athlete, that wants the ball when you're down by 2 and there's 5 seconds left, and we all do it. We dream about when I was a little kid in the backyard. I'm throwing the ball to myself. I'm shooting into the wastebasket, Billy Cunningham, Julius Erving for two, like you want to win the game, right? And so as an offensive player, I think everybody in that situation was like, yeah, I just want to get the ball back so we can be the unit that controls it. Same for the defense, And I think defensively though, there's probably a whole host of players out there be like, yeah, I'd just rather have the offense go out and win it because it's tiring, man, to play defense. Like playing defensive line and playing in the 2-minute drill on defense is literally the most exhausting thing you could possibly ever think of. If any of the listeners out there ever wrestled or boxed or did any of those like one-on-one sports, that's what playing defense is like in a 2-minute drill. It's not. I'm going to use math here. It's not half as tiring to be on the offense in a 2-minute drill as it is on defense. It's twice as tiring. I would even go as far as saying it's 3 times as tiring to be on defense during a 2-minute drill. It's exhausting.
Well, I know that those last 2 minutes were exhausting, but obviously Allen, he goes down, they score. The guy falls down. He finds Davis in the end zone. Mahomes come back. They score. Allen comes back. He scores. It's 4th down and 4. It looks like the game could end. Allen's running around and making plays, and they score 13 seconds. This is where it's interesting. Now, you asked a question on Twitter, right, at Joe Valerio 73. If you're a Hollywood film writer, what would be the name of the movie for the ending of that game? Now, you wrote 13 seconds, right?
Yeah, that was my little throw out there, and got some nice responses.
Right.
Yeah,
now I went with Kick It Deep, the epic story of the failure of the Buffalo Bills. Because
Mike,
Joe, people
Mike,
keep talking.
If anybody, any of you Netflix fans or listeners, how about the Squib Game? That was one that popped up, right? Taking a little play on the Squid Game, but yeah,
and that's
go
why
ahead.
I asked you, because people were saying they should have squib kicked it. And I said, no, you got to kick it short, because if you squib kick it and let's say somebody fields it and falls right down at the 40-yard line, you've given them the ball at the 40 and no time comes off the clock. That's why I said
right,
you got to
right.
kick it short so they field it around the 5 and then have to run and get
Right.
tackled so time comes off the clock. And chances are, if you cover that kick, he's getting tackled around the 25 or 30 with only 8 seconds instead of 13.
Or if that, Mike, if that, right? Depending on how you kick it and who you kick it to, and if he's got a bobble at hand, like when I was saying squib, I meant like you said, like a deep squib, like a squib that's going to land on like that. It's going to zip through there and fire it down to like the 10 yard line on the ground, so that you got to handle it a little, because you'd have a little bit of, you'd have less time to set your blocking scheme up that way. Listen, here's a couple years ago, and this is totally unrelated, but kind of related. My daughter studied concussions, right? She, in her medical research that she does. And we went through and looked at a whole 2 seasons of kickoff returns, because my thing was get rid of kickoff returns, like get rid of kickoffs, because it's for the amount of damage that people do and the injuries that happen on those things. Like, we went through and there were thousands and thousands and thousands of kickoffs, right? In a 32 team, 16 game season, right? There were like 12 kickoffs returned for a touchdown out of thousands, Mike. I can't remember the percentages off the top of my head, but let me tell you, it was minuscule. So that plays right into your hands, and what your thoughts are. Play the percentages, man. If you're afraid that somebody's going to return a kickoff in a situation like that, because then what happens? Either they're going to try to run it back once and get a return, and then the game's over, right? You lose all 13 seconds. Or they're going to start doing what I call we used to run this in college and high school. We called it the Stanford band. Right. Remember the Stanford band play, right?
Yeah, well, that's a point that I brought up, is if you kick it short, there's 13 seconds. The guy fields it. They almost probably pre-planned of desperation and start to lateral it all over the field, almost acknowledging that 13 seconds, I can't catch, run, get tackled, and still have enough time. So they might start firing the ball all over the field in a sign of waving the white flag before they ever get tackled.
Right, Mike. I mean, think about it. I mean, Tyreek Hill, he can run 100 yards in 13 seconds, but there aren't a lot of guys out there that can, especially if you're dodging and tackling and things like that. So, it's either you're running it back or the game's over.
Yeah.
It really was. I mean, short of them just falling right on it or downing it with their knee, if it was kicked a little bit shorter than the Bills would have wanted to, they still weren't going to have that kind of time.
Well, even if he catches it and downs it where he is, he's at the 10-yard line.
Right. So it would have been now, but Mike, but then here, I just so we don't lose this point. Fatal flaw number 2 was, what were the Bills thinking rushing 4 and only dropping 7, and at the same time putting those guys on the sidelines like it was the old dance, the stroll dance, where you let people dance down the middle of the dance floor.
Yeah.
Like what, because that's the whole do it, Kels, do it, right? I mean, everybody, I'm sure a lot of fans, maybe not a lot of non-Chiefs fans, but the big thing going around Kansas City is this audio of, you zoom in on the audio of Patrick on that second play where Kelsey gets to way beyond your kicker range for Butker, right? And he's like, Kels, do it, Kels, do it. Because what happened was, Mike, and I don't know how prevalent the story has been, but what's gotten out there is that Kelsey said to Patrick in the huddle, dude, they're like basically standing on the sidelines. Like, I'm going because that was a complete improvisation that Travis Kelsey ran there. That was not his intended route. Yeah. And he said to Patrick, I'm going down the middle. I'm running a seam, because who wouldn't want Travis Kelsey down the seam? And that's why Patrick was like, do it, Kels, do it, do it. And you can hear him on the audio of the game film. And that was the other fatal flaw. Like, what were they doing rushing 4? And by the way, not only did the Bills rush 4, they spied a guy on the line. Like, it was just like, I'm just like, they couldn't have made more errors in that time when they decided, when they decided to not kick that ball short and do the touchback thing, to the way they defended. I mean, they basically, they gave, who now Patrick is now known as in Kansas City as the Grim Reaper, right? Because I'm sure all the Eagles fans out here and all the football fans on the East Coast have heard, Andy, because everybody loves Andy, right? He's a Philly guy for so long. Like, he said to Patrick, hey, when things are grim, be the Grim Reaper. So, like,
tremendous.
Come on.
Tremendous.
It was tremendous.
Yeah.
It's just a fantastic weekend of football. I hope this weekend is half as good as that weekend.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that because last week we were talking about quarterbacks, and it was a mixed bag this weekend because you had these two great quarterbacks, Mahomes and Allen. They're like the next two, I mentioned it last week. It's the new Brady Manning. These two guys year after year. You throw Joe Burrow into that mix. But then Rodgers and Brady, you see those two guys lose, and it almost felt like the passing of here's these two young guys who dueled it out and took over, and the two old guys didn't have it in maybe their last, go around.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the changing of the guard across the whole league in AFC and NFC. Right now you got another young gun matchup, right? Joe Burrow. And I don't want to hear anybody call him Joe Cool. There's only one Joe Cool, and that's Joe Montana. I don't want to hear that nickname be. If they're going to call him Joe Cool, call him Joe Cool Part 2. Because there's only one Joe Cool.
Now, speaking of Joe Cool Montana, right? Now, you played with Joe. When he was done, right?
Yeah.
Did everybody know he was done? Did he say, this is it for me? Or could you sense it? Like, in other words, do the guys do they know if Brady's done? Do they know if Rodgers isn't going to do his teammates have a sense of that?
I know they know that. Yeah, I think they know. They're going to know. They'll know in the inside. They know, Mike. They know whether he's going to be coming back or not. And they got to. He has to say
somewhere along the line, guys, this is probably it for me. Like, right?
Well, it's only fair to the organization, right, so that they can start to build. Right. I mean, but Joe Montana actually, we got that one more year out of him in '94. It's a really funny story, Mike. So Joe played. We played that AFC Championship game against the Bills in '93 after coming off two magical games. Right. We beat Steelers in overtime. We beat Houston in the House of Pain. Buddy Ryan's vaunted 46 defense. And then Joe gets knocked out in Buffalo. He hits the like frozen tundra of Richfield, right, in Orchard Park. And he basically was done. He was like, he went into Mr. Hunt's office, our owner, Lamar Hunt, and said, look, Mr. Hunt, I can't do this anymore. I can't. And Lamar's like, well, you got another year left on the contract. Because I quite frankly, I really don't care. He said, I got to play 8 games on Arrowhead on a crappy turf. Like our turf was great, but I mean, it was good compared to some other AstroTurf, but it was still that old school crap AstroTurf. And then we got to, we play Buffalo, we got Seattle was turf. So he's looking at like 10, 11 games on turf in 1994. And he's like, Mr. Hunt, I'm done. And Lamar Hunt goes, all right, well, what if we can get grass at Arrowhead? And he goes, well, I'll think about it. So Lamar Hunt picks up the phone. He calls George Toma, legendary groundskeeper, and says, George, how fast can you have grass on Arrowhead? And he goes, I don't know. I could probably have it growing by May. And he's like, okay, get the bulldozers out. And like people don't realize how much money that cost Kansas City and the Hunt family. But like,
that's a great story.
Oh my God. And Joe was like, all right, I'll play another year if you put in grass. So next thing you know, we come out, I'm taking home pieces of Arrowhead turf. And
that's amazing.
So like, again, you do know, and that was like a long story about a short question, but like, when players are done, and we knew that was Joe Montana's last year. We knew going into the year. He had made it very, very clear that 1994 was his last season.
So watching Brady, do you think he's done, listening to him and now watching him and then listening, do you think he plays again next year or is he done?
I'm trying to find all the cues and the clues, Mike. And
he's Instagramming. He's on podcasts. I mean, you didn't have that back in the day. No,
that's the thing. You got so much social media. I'm gonna make a bold guess. I'm gonna say right now, today, January 26th. I think he's gonna play another year. I think he's leaving. That's unrequited for him. That loss. I think he's gonna give it one more shot. I really do. I think he's going to give it one more, and that'll give, Bruce Arians a chance to see what he can do to, in the draft, or if they come in now. Listen, if they draft a quarterback in the first round, or they trade up, and then I'd say, it's either he's grooming him or that's it. He's going to be done. But I'd say today, based on the clues I've seen, I think he's going to give it one more shot, one more year.
Let's real quick. The 49ers, they are able to get into this game, and I don't know. I mean, they beat Green Bay. The fact that the game's at Lambeau, it almost becomes a detriment when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers. So here's San Francisco. They have had the Rams number, but does it feel like this Rams team? They have done this so unconventional. They traded all draft picks. They've added like an all-star team. Does it feel like this all-star team is gelling at the right time, or does it feel like San Francisco has the right mojo?
I personally think San Francisco's luck is going to run out. I really do. I look, I know he's got a nice little vowel at the end of his name, Garoppolo, right? Who's going to go with the Italian kid? But I just have a feeling that the luck is going to wear out, and they're just going to get after him, and Donald's going to be coming. They're going to be pinning their ears back. And as good as Debo is, and the players that they've got in their arsenal, and the sort of the momentum, it's a momentum game, right? And they've got this momentum going. I think they're going to hit that momentum's going to hit a wall with the Rams. I really do. I agree with you, Mike. Your commentary there. I think it's an all-star team that has been put together for this moment. I think it's kind of Matt Stafford's time, and I think they're going to run into a little bit of a buzzsaw against the Rams. And I don't think the game is going to be as close as maybe even Vegas thinks it is. I think the Rams win this game by 10.
All right.
I really do.
Hey, the Rams could have, if the Rams would have held on in week 18, the Niners wouldn't even have been here.
Right.
So we'll see. They get a little revenge here. Now you got the Chiefs and the new kids on the block. I was laughing because if the Bills would have won that game, Bengals Bills, I would have felt like it was like 1989 again. You got Boomer Esiason going and Jim Kelly going after Joe Montana with the Niners on the other side here. But the Bengals are here. I don't know that they did something really impressive this week. The Titans, I feel like the Titans thing is going to be a really interesting offseason there. How many more times can they keep going at it as constructed before they are banging their heads in the wall? But the Bengals, we just remember, you saw that game. They scored some big points on the Chiefs just a handful of weeks ago.
They did. And, the Chiefs had some turnover issues in that game. That was not, wasn't their best game from a plus-minus turnover ratio perspective. So, that was a little bit of their downfall. I think the Bengals are a really good team. I think Joe Burrow's, he's making plays. He's got they're building the right team about him. They're going to be a team that's around for a long time. I'm just disappointed that, the furthest, East team in the playoffs is Cincinnati. Like it's like a western half of the United States.
Odd.
Final four, which isn't me. But I'm just glad the Cowboys aren't in there. But I just think the Bengals are going to run into something here that is the Chiefs just get really magical. And I hate to make playoffs and all that stuff about magic and all that get overly positive about the momentum. But I think the Chiefs are, as magical as the 49ers are playing right now, as far as this sort of Cinderella type story, I think the Chiefs' magic is a little bit different. Theirs is a true momentum. It's an opening of the playbook that is, going to be able to exploit. I think having played the Bengals twice now, they're going to be able to exploit the things that they saw in that first game. And I really don't feel, I talked about this on our podcast we recorded today. I don't think the Chiefs are going to have a letdown. They are not a team that has that, like, oh, we just won a big game. And then, it's the playoffs, dude. Like there are no you can't have a letdown now. So I think the Chiefs are going to keep rolling, which is kind of sounds a little counter to my thoughts about what's going to happen to the 49ers. But I think the Bengals don't have what the Rams have. And I think that's why I think the Chiefs win this one.
All right. Joe Valerio, you can, of course, check him out right here on the Sports Bash on Wednesdays, just talking football, Cup of Joe. You're doing some stuff on your YouTube channel now.
I am on the YouTube channel doing a Monday motivation, a little Cup of Joe. Check it out. Just a little, whether you're in business, sports, community, whatever you do, check it out. Just sharing some lessons from the gridiron.
All right, Joe, we will catch up with you to recap all these games next week, man.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, there's Joe Valerio here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN.